Hey, I'm back. Well, hello. It's been a little while. It's been a couple months, and I apologize for that. But you know what? We do this so often here that I feel like we don't even need to get into it, you know? I feel like every now and then we just have these like 2-3 month bouts where I don't do anything. I think we should all be used to that by now, so I don't think I should apologize at all, even though I'm sorry. I'm sorry though, but let's just forget about all that. Let's just get into this heckin' video. Let's just get into what y'all came here for. So the Oscars are this Sunday, which means we're in the hype. We're in the big Oscar season. We're in the thick of it right now. And we all know the reason for the season. We're here to see who's the best of the best, who had the greatest performances, and who used the most skill in their craft of filmmaking. But I know what you're really here for. That's right. You want some help winning that Oscar poll in your office. So I'm gonna give you all the little details to help you win that Oscar poll, so you can tell Sharon in accounting to suck it. So yeah, what this video is going to be is me making predictions on the Oscars, and then you can go watch the Oscars and see how right I am, or you can see how wrong I am and make fun of me and come back to this video and make comments and hurt my feelings. You can do that too. So let's get into this. Okay, so what I'm gonna do with this is I'm not always 100% right, so I will give you my top pick for who I think is going to win said Oscar, and then I'm going to give you my second pick, because if my top pick isn't right, then I can redeem myself with my second pick. And even though that won't make me 100% right, it'll still give me a little bit of dignity. And if neither of those things are right, again, you can come back to this video and go into the comments and hate on me a little bit. I don't care, whatever. However you want to relieve your stress, you can use me. So without further ado, let's get into this. Let's predict some Oscars. Let's do it. Let's give out these awards. Let's give these people these little golden dudes because they've earned it. All right, so the order that we're doing it in, I don't know if it'll be the order in which they announce them at the Oscars, but this is the order in which I downloaded the Oscar nominees on my phone. Okay, sound good? Let's get into our very first category. So the first one that I have here is the Oscar for Best Production Design. So the nominees for Best Production Design are Beauty and the Beast, Blade Runner 2049, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, and The Shape of Water. My two biggest picks for this are Blade Runner 2049 and Shape of Water. Both had extremely detailed and beautiful sets. Already, this is extremely hard. So I think my number one pick for Best Production Design goes to Blade Runner 2049. Frankly, because a lot of this stuff happened on set, and you don't see that with futuristic movies anymore. 95% of this movie was done without green screen. All of this was on built sets. Everything in this movie was built. They even used miniatures, like they used to back in the old times of movie making. You know, they didn't CGI an entire city. They built a city. My second pick for Best Production Design is Shape of Water. The detail that went into many of these sets reminded me of like old movies from the 50s and 60s where they just built a world. So as far as production design goes, my number one pick is Blade Runner 2049, and my number two pick is Shape of Water. The next category is cinematography, and the nominees for the Oscar of Best Cinematography are Blade Runner 2049, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Mudbound, and The Shape of Water. This is another one where it's the same two movies toe to toe, but for best cinematography, and that's camera work, that's the man who's behind the camera, who works with the lights, who gets the best shot possible. I think that's gonna go to Roger Deakins for Blade Runner 2049. Roger Deakins is kind of like the Leonardo DiCaprio of cinematography. This dude's been nominated 13 times and has never won. Roger Deakins is just revolutionary, and he's deserved it for years. Blade Runner 2049 is one of the most gorgeous movies I've seen in my entire life. But if Blade Runner 2049 doesn't get it, my number two pick is Shape of Water. I have never seen a creature feature look so dazzling and so beautiful. But again, Blade Runner just
beats it. So for cinematography, my number 1 pick is Roger Deakins for Blade Runner 2049. My number 2 pick is Dan Laustsen for Shape of Water. The next category is costume design, and the nominees for costume design are Beauty and the Beast, Darkest Hour, Phantom Thread, The Shape of Water, and Victoria and Abdul. So my number 1 pick for best costume design is gonna go to Phantom Thread. Phantom Thread, I think, was a very underrated movie last year, but Phantom Thread is a movie that's basically built for this Oscar. This film is about a fashion designer who makes like the most gorgeous dresses in all of the land. So I think it's definitely going to go to Phantom Thread. But if it doesn't go to Phantom Thread, I'm gonna say Beauty and the Beast. So my number 1 pick for costume design is Phantom Thread. My number 2 pick for costume design is Beauty and the Beast. But it's definitely gonna go to Phantom Thread. The next category is sound editing. The nominees for sound editing are Baby Driver, Blade Runner 2049, Dunkirk, The Shape of Water, and Star Wars The Last Jedi. So, guess what I'm gonna pick again? So sound editing, because someone created the noise. I'm gonna go with Blade Runner 2049, because so many of the sounds in this movie were so unique to this movie. Granted, they did have some things to work off of since it is a sequel, but you felt like you were in this world. It's kind of ridiculous. So because I felt so immersed into this world, I think my number 1 pick for sound editing is Blade Runner 2049. And my number 2 pick, of course, is Shape of Water. Mostly because of those creature sounds. Sound editing. Number 1, Blade Runner 2049. Number 2, Shape of Water. Now we're getting into sound mixing. The nominees for sound mixing are Baby Driver, Blade Runner 2049, Dunkirk, The Shape of Water, and Star Wars The Last Jedi. So this award almost always goes to the war movie. And this year the war movie is Dunkirk. So my number 1 pick for sound mixing is Dunkirk. My number 2 will probably be Baby Driver. Because cars, the car sounds. I know I don't sound very like intelligent on this, but believe me, I kind of know what I'm talking about. My number 1 pick for sound mixing is Dunkirk. My number 2 pick for sound mixing is Baby Driver, because explosions and cars. The next category is Best Original Score, so the music created for the movie. The nominees for Best Original Score are Hans Zimmer for Dunkirk, Johnny Greenwood for Phantom Thread, Alexander Desplat for The Shape of Water, John Williams for Star Wars The Last Jedi, and Carter Burwell for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. My number 1 pick for original score is Alexander Desplat. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Alexandre Desplat for The Shape of Water. My number 1 pick is Shape of Water, frankly because out of all of the scores this year, that is definitely the most unique. That is the most iconic. And granted, I am talking about Star Wars in this same one, but Star Wars has existed for years and years and years, and John Williams is just adding to that. It was beautiful, and it definitely added a lot, but I don't know if it added enough to deserve the award. So, Shape of Water is my number 1 pick. My number 2 pick is Phantom Thread. Johnny Greenwood, who is known for rock music, created this great classical score. It sounds like something that is from over 100 years ago. But it's gorgeous and it's beautiful. But again, I think the most unique score is Shape of Water this year. So my number 1 pick for Best Original Score is Shape of Water. My number 2 pick is Phantom Thread. This is another one that gets really, really hard. Visual effects, because this year there were a lot of visual effects heavy movies. The nominees for Best Visual Effects are Blade Runner 2049, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Kong, Skull Island, Star Wars The Last Jedi, and War for the Planet of the Apes. So this one, I think, with me personally, visual effects are so much better when you don't realize they're there. In the movie where I think I realized visual effects the least was probably Blade Runner 2049. Like I said, this movie doesn't really rely on CGI, but when it utilizes it, it's very seamless. You don't realize that it's happening, but it's there. Visual effects, my number 1 pick, Blade Runner 2049. My number 2 pick, War for the Planet of the Apes. Oh, this is another hard one. Okay, the next category is film editing. And this year there were some very well edited movies. The nominees for Best Film Editing are Baby Driver, Dunkirk, I, Tonya, The Shape of Water, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. So the day that I saw Baby Driver, I said to my friends, this is going to win the Oscar for Best Editing. I've been shaken a little bit by I, Tonya though. When I saw I, Tonya, that movie was so fast-paced and is definitely the Goodfellas of our generation. You know, a movie that tells a story, but tells it in such a fashion where it's just seamless. Like, it's a biography, but it still feels like a well-flowing movie, and you go through a person's entire life in 2 hours, and it doesn't feel like 2 hours. But even though it's been shaken, my number one pick is still Baby Driver, because the work that goes into synchronizing music and action, the way all of it just syncs up, is amazing. So film editing, number 1, Baby Driver. Number 2, I, Tonya. The next category is makeup and hairstyling. And the nominees for makeup and hairstyling are Darkest Hour, Victoria and Abdul, and Wonder. Darkest Hour. That's my only pick for this. Darkest Hour. Like, they didn't just make Gary Oldman look like Winston Churchill. They made Gary Oldman Winston Churchill. So, Darkest Hour, because they created Winston Churchill. They recreated Winston Churchill. I guess they didn't give birth to Winston Churchill, but it looks like they did. The next category is Best Supporting Actress. And again, this year, man, there's too much good stuff. There's way too much good stuff. Usually I'm really good at predicting this stuff, I think, because every year there's always that movie that, like, yeah, they're gonna win that category. Yeah, this movie's gonna win that category. But this year there's just so many good things happening in film that it's gonna be neck and neck. Like, this is gonna be a very intense Oscars. I'm gonna watch the Oscars like most dudes watch the Super Bowl. Anyway, the nominees for Best Supporting Actress are Mary J. Blige for Mudbound, Allison Janney for I, Tonya, Leslie Manville for Phantom Thread, Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird, and Octavia Spencer for The Shape of Water. So when I saw Lady Bird for the first time, I knew that Laurie Metcalf would win Best Supporting Actress for playing the controlling mom. But after seeing I, Tonya, Allison Janney also played a very, very good controlling mom. So this one is just excruciatingly hard. Because Allison Janney is just sweeping the board with awards. She's winning every single one. But Laurie Metcalf was just so great in Lady Bird. Like, she was amazing. Oh no. Okay, you know what? Just take this one with a grain of salt, because I am probably wrong on it. But I gotta stick to my guns, you know? Even though Allison Janney has won every other supporting actress award, I am gonna say Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird is my number 1 pick for Best Supporting Actress. My number 2 pick is Allison Janney for I, Tonya, because, yeah, she was fantastic. But oh man, it's gonna be a rough watch. It's gonna be very intense. But like I said, I'm gonna stick to my guns, because sometimes the Oscars they go against the grain, and I think this might be their against the grain pick this year. So my number 1 pick for Best Supporting Actress, Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird. My number 2 pick, Allison Janney for I, Tonya. And now it's time for Best Supporting Actor. The nominees for Best Supporting Actor are Willem Dafoe for The Florida Project, Woody Harrelson for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, Richard Jenkins for The Shape of Water, Christopher Plummer for All the Money in the World, and Sam Rockwell for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. So Sam Rockwell is another one that's cleaning the board. But the other night I saw Willem Dafoe in The Florida Project and was just wowed by it. Also, Richard Jenkins! I forgot about Richard Jenkins in The Shape of Water! Holy crap! I know what I'm gonna do. My number 1 pick for Best Supporting Actor is Sam Rockwell, just because he had one of the best character arcs I've ever seen in a movie. And he played it well. Like, he went through a lot. Like, our opinions of this character change so much throughout this movie. And with a lesser actor, it could have gone so wrong. But because he invested himself into this person so much, it was so believable. So Sam Rockwell is my number 1 pick. And my number 2 pick is Richard Jenkins for The Shape of Water. Just because he was just so freaking charming. He's so freaking charming. No, yeah, Richard Jenkins was very charming in Shape of Water. So the next nominee is Best Original Song. The nominees for Best Original Song are Mighty River for Mudbound, Mystery of Love for Call Me By Your Name, Remember Me from Coco, Stand Up for Something, Marshall, This Is Me, The Greatest Showman. Now for this one, you've seen my Coco review, and you know that Coco made me tear up a little bit. So I'm gonna go with Remember Me from Coco, because I liked that song a lot, and that song happened during the very emotional scene, and because I like that song so much, I put it in my Spotify, but I had to take it off almost immediately because it popped up in my shuffle while listening to Spotify, and I started tearing up again. So because this song is so powerful, just because it's associated with so many things, and it stands for so many things, my number one pick for Best Song is Remember Me from Coco. The next category is Best Animated Feature, so Best Cartoon Movie. And the nominees are The Boss Baby.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
You know, we were doing so well this year. We were doing so well until we got to this part. All right. I'm over it. Okay. Best Animated Feature, The Boss Baby, The Breadwinner, Coco, Ferdinand, and Loving Vincent. And my number one pick for Best Animated Feature is Coco. Just because that movie just means so much to me, and I'm pretty sure plenty of other people. Coco is my only pick for Best Animated Feature. It's gonna win. Also because it's Pixar. I don't think Pixar has ever not won. The next category is Best Adapted Screenplay. So that means a screenplay that was based on a pre-existing property. So a screenplay based on a book, and this year, based on a comic, which I'm pretty excited about. So anyway, the nominees for Best Adapted Screenplay are Call Me By Your Name, The Disaster Artist, Logan, Molly's Game, and Mudbound. So this is another difficult one, because I really want Logan to win. I do so much. I really want Logan to win, because it's really the only comic book movie that's nominated for something this year other than special effects. And I think that means a lot. And I think Logan deserved so much more love this year. I think the performances in that were so good. But I think it just happened way too early in the year to be fresh in the Academy's mind, so I missed out on a lot. But I'm glad it got this nomination. Although I don't think it's gonna win. And Aaron Sorkin for Molly's Game. Aaron Sorkin is one of the greatest writers that we have living now. But I think my number one pick for Best Adapted Screenplay is Call Me By Your Name. I have not seen that yet, but I've heard such amazing things and such beautiful things. So my number one pick for Best Adapted Screenplay is Call Me By Your Name. My number two pick is Molly's Game. The next category is Best Original Screenplay, so a screenplay that's based on basically nothing, something that's original. The nominees are The Big Sick, Get Out, Lady Bird, The Shape of Water, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Now, this one's very difficult, because The Big Sick was beautifully written, but that was based on the writer's own experiences, so it's hard to give that one Best Original Screenplay. And Get Out just had such a solid message, but 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri was, man, the dialogue in that movie just flowed so well. So it is between Get Out and 3 Billboards, but I don't know which one I'm gonna actually... Screw it. You know what? I think I'm gonna also have to stick with my guns on this one, because this was another one where I walked out of this movie and I said to myself, this is gonna win Best Screenplay, and I gotta stick with that heart, man. It's kept me alive this long. I think I owe it this. So my number one pick for Best Original Screenplay is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and my number two pick is Get Out. Man, Get Out is probably gonna get it just because it has such a good message, but I think it's gonna win something else, and I'll get to that in a little bit. The next category is Best Leading Actor. The nominees are Timothée Chalamet for Call Me By Your Name, Daniel Day-Lewis for Phantom Thread, Daniel Kaluuya for Get Out, Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour, and Denzel Washington for Roman J. Israel Esquire. Anyway, Gary Oldman. It's gonna be Gary Oldman, because like I said, from what I've seen of Darkest Hour, he was Winston Churchill. You know, not only did they make him
physically Winston Churchill, but he incorporated himself into that person. He was that person. So I think Gary Oldman for that. And again, you know, he's been sweeping the boards, and it'd be nice if the Oscars went against the grain. But I think he's gonna get it. Plus, Gary Oldman's great anyway, so I can just pretend that it's for something else, even though I haven't seen this movie and I really don't plan to. But my number 2 pick will probably be Timothée Chalamet, just because, again, I've heard so many great things about this kid, and it's a kid. It's a kid who's taking on this very adult role where he's feeling some very adult feelings. Number 1, Gary Oldman. Number 2, Timothée Chalamet. Now, the nominees for Best Leading Actress are Sally Hawkins for Shape of Water, Frances McDormand for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, Margot Robbie for I, Tonya, Saoirse Ronan for Lady Bird, and Meryl Streep for The Post. It's not gonna be Meryl Streep for The Post. She's got enough stuff, okay? She doesn't need any more stuff. So this one is another one where my gut, you know, I walked out and I was like, yep. Frances McDormand for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I'm not gonna pick anything else. So give me like double points for this if I get this one right, but my God, that woman is a powerhouse in that movie. So yeah, number 1, Frances McDormand. Number 1, Frances McDormand. The next category is Best Directing for a Motion Picture. And the nominees are Christopher Nolan for Dunkirk, Jordan Peele for Get Out, Greta Gerwig for Lady Bird, Paul Thomas Anderson for Phantom Thread, Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water. This one is just who has the best vision. And I think the movie that had the best vision is Shape of Water. Like I've been saying this entire video, the only other movie that I think created a world other than Blade Runner is Shape of Water. So my number 1 pick for Best Directing is Guillermo del Toro for Shape of Water. My number 2 pick is gonna be Greta Gerwig for Lady Bird for a much different reason. Not because it sent me to a different world, but because I felt like this was a movie that was taking place in mine, if that makes any sense. Lady Bird was such a character piece that you felt like you were watching a documentary. Everything in that felt so natural, and I'm pretty sure that was just because of the way she handled her set, because of the way she handled her actors. So my number 1 pick, Guillermo del Toro. My number 2 pick, Greta Gerwig.
All right, here we are, the big dog.
We're at the Best Picture now, folks. So the nominees for Best Picture this year are Call Me By Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, The Shape of Water, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. All right, so before we talk about these, can we talk about how solid of a year this is for movies? Like, this is insane, because usually it's just the Oscar bait movies. And granted, there's a couple of those in there. There's like The Post and Darkest Hour, which are the Oscar bait movies this year. But, I mean, we're talking about a horror movie with Get Out. We're talking about a small movie about a high school girl with Lady Bird. But we're also talking about a movie where a woman falls in love with a fish man. Like, this is such a solid year. This is insane. I love it. I love it. So here's the thing with Best Picture. It's either the movie that's won the most awards that year, like the movie that's collected the most, or it's the movie with the biggest message. And there's not one that really swept the floor, you know? All of the nominees are all over the place, and I love that. But I think the movie that was the most powerful this year, the movie that got people talking the most, the movie that helped spread word of something that needed to be talked about, I think that movie was Get Out. My number 1 pick this year for Best Picture is Get Out, just because it had so much to say. And I know I didn't say it would win anything else this year, but neither did Spotlight, neither did Argo, neither did fucking Crash. Does anyone else remember when Crash won? That movie had too much to say. That movie shoved messages down your throat, and it still won Best Picture because it had a message. So I think the movie that had the biggest message this year is Get Out. My number 2 pick is Shape of Water, just because that movie just embraced everything that was movies. So my number 1 pick for Best Picture is Get Out. My number 2 pick is Shape of Water. All right, folks, that's it. And tell you what, after the Oscars, which are this Sunday, I will upload a video where I'm either gloating by how much I won, or I'll be really depressed if I lost. What will I do? If I won, I know that I won and I get bragging rights. But if I lost... Alright, if I get less than 15 nominees right, like my number 1 and number 2, if like it's just something completely different than my number 1 and number 2, I'll shave my entire face. No, not my entire, like from here down is what I mean. I'm not getting rid of these guys. But yeah, if I get less than 15 right, I'll get rid of this again, because that's all I got. That's really all I have to give up anymore. So yeah, be prepared for that. Happy Oscar season. Anyway, see you at the Oscars. As always,
Watch movies, my friends.
and cut. Okay, can I get out of this? Can I get out of this ridiculousness? Cause I'm done. I'm done wearing this. Wait, who am I talking to? Who made me wear this? Did I? You know, I didn't really have to wear this. I didn't really have to do this. Alright.